Okay, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. Today we're going to cover the harvest of your urban worm bag. Unless you started your urban worm bag with existing vermicompost, compost, or something like leaf mold, it should be at least 4 months or more since you started your urban worm bag before you attempt to harvest. If you started it with the living material I just mentioned, you could probably harvest it 2 months or so. But regardless, your bag should be at least 3/4 full as well. Now, I want to say up front that your first harvest, and maybe even your second, is not going to go as you might expect. This is especially true if you started your worm bag with paper or cardboard waste for your base layer. Now, if you remember, I told you to start with a base layer of about 6 to 8 inches of bedding with a little bit of food waste. Now, it's highly unlikely that the worms consumed all of that bedding layer before you started adding your regular additions of food waste and bedding. So the worms began moving higher into that fresher material and probably never got around to consuming the bottom few inches of bedding. Bottom line, your first harvest will likely include lots of that unprocessed material. And this is fine. You can just throw that stuff back in the top of your worm bag for another trip through. But if you started your urban worm bag with a living, broken down material like compost or leaf mold, your first harvest may very well be fragmented and processed into worm castings and ready to use in your garden. So the first thing we're going to do is remove the detachable bottom from your urban worm bag. You can use this as a catch for your harvest. Now, sometimes I'm a bit messy with my harvest, so I like to put a shallow bowl or a mortar tray under the bag. You may also notice some residual moisture or even a few worms in the bottom catch once you remove it. If so, you can discard the leachate and toss those stragglers back in the top of your urban worm bag. Once the bottom's removed, you can release the lock on your drawstring, pull downwards on that lock to open up the bottom liner. Now, a common question we get is, why doesn't all that stuff just fall out of the bottom when we open it up? That's a really good question, but it's also why we recommend not harvesting until the bag is 3/4 full. You want some amount of compaction in the urban worm bag, and this is true for any continuous flow worm bed. The downward and sideways compaction of the vermicompost inside the urban worm bag as the bag narrows towards the bottom creates a sideways compaction that we call bridging, and this ensures the contents don't just fall out all at once. Okay, so now that you got the drawstring open, you may see some castings simply fall out on their own, but it's likely that you'll need to coax the harvested material from the bottom of the urban worm bag by squeezing the sides of the bottom liner, or perhaps even hitting the sides of the fabric above the bottom liner. This jars those castings loose and allows them to fall through the bottom. And sometimes I'll also simply reach into the bottom of the urban worm bag and grab handfuls of compost. But if I don't want to get my hands dirty, I'll use a small garden rake with bent tines to pull material from the bottom of the urban worm bag. Because your vermicompost has been sitting in the bag for a few months before you harvest, and because moisture control can be tricky in the first few months, expect your harvest to be more compacted than the harvest you'll do a few weeks later. Compaction is one of the biggest frustrations with harvesting, and I'm going to be honest that it's rare to see worm castings fall out cleanly like this out of the bottom of your urban worm bag. But you can reduce excess compaction by making sure you're adding 2 parts bedding to 1 part food waste by volume. This helps with moisture control, and adding bulky material like wood chips to your vermicompost that are resistant to compaction can help as well. You can also harvest every couple weeks once you've done your first harvest of the urban worm bag to reduce compaction. And you also might consider leaving the removable bottom of your urban worm bag detached or fully removed to allow more airflow on the bottom, which helps to dry out the vermicompost at the bottom. This helps the castings to flow out more easily, but drying out the bottom also discourages those moisture-loving worms from hanging out in the bottom of the bag where they'll come out in the harvest, which kind of defeats the whole point of continuous flow in the first place. Now, I mentioned that your first 1 to 2 harvests may include a lot of unprocessed material that the worms and microbes never truly help to decompose. This is normal. The layers above should be a dark, rich, consistent color, and you'll see that stuff come out of the bottom consistently. But when your urban worm bag is up and running and you've begun harvesting every couple weeks, you should stop your harvest when you see more unprocessed paper and cardboard in the harvest. That stuff should be breaking down fairly quickly in a mature worm farm, so if you see it, I would reduce the frequency of your harvests or just reduce the amount that you take out with each harvest. You'll notice that even after you harvest, the urban worm bag will appear just as full as it was when you began your harvest. This is due to that mild compaction we talked about earlier, which helps keep the vermicompost suspended above the bottom. So when I'm done with my harvest, one of my favorite hacks is to hit the side of the urban worm bag with my hands, my foot, or even a blunt object, which helps to jar loose some of the vermicompost that's stuck higher in the bag. It helps it fall towards the bottom where it's going to be ready for your next harvest. Okay, thanks for watching. Thanks for your interest, and thanks for your purchase of the Urban Worm Bag. And even if you're not a customer, thanks for using worms to help recycle your waste. At our core, the Urban Worm Company is an educational resource first and an online store second. So even if you're not interested in any of our products, I hope you check out the videos on this channel and also our blog posts over at urbanwormcompany.com. Thanks for watching.